Hey class, this is a response to your first week discussion question, the Columbus controversy. Let me rephrase or remind you of what that question was. I gave you two videos in which I wanted you to view and then answer the following questions. And the first part of that response should be, Columbus was not the first European to sail to the New World. Why is he given credit for founding the New World? Based on your research on the academic sources that I gave you within the discussion post on the library guide, you were to find reasons why he was given credit for, number one, making a mistake, thinking that he was going to sail westward from Europe to the Indies, not realizing that there was a whole continent in between, and for the fact that he went to his deathbed never knowing that he had discovered a new land. There are lots of responses to that, and actually there's no right or wrong response, but whatever your response was, you should have given credit or the source in which you created that opinion. The second part of that discussion post was there were several million people on this continent that had civilizations that far surpassed Europe at the time. For example, Cahokia, which was part of your interactive lecture. How do you discover a land that is already inhabited and further advanced? Your response to that should have given credit to articles that you read, not just your opinion, because again, I really don't care what you think, I care that you think. And then finally, I asked, was Columbus involved in the genocide of the native inhabitants of the island that he landed on? If so, do these countries consider him a hero? The first part of that question is that I wanted you to make a call. I wanted your opinion on whether he was involved with genocide. But a lot of you said, well, it depends on what country you're from or how you view it. Your grade depends on you making a judgment call. I wanted you to make a judgment call, and I wanted you to support that judgment call based on the academic resources that you researched. I do want to follow up a little bit on just Columbus in general, and then I'm going to show you a short video, and then at the end, I'll go back and give you some more information on how I want you to deal with discussion questions in the future.
Local community leaders were subject to powerful regional leaders like Wakanagari, who controlled trade with large personal fleets and warehouses of commodities. Into this world, Columbus returned in November 1493 with a military flotilla of 17 ships. Under his command were armor-clad soldiers, mounted cavalry, attack dogs, and guns. The Spanish conquest of the Caribbean began. Gold mines were opened, and the Taíno were enslaved, forced to mine the ore. A Spanish priest, Bartolomé de las Casas, who accompanied Columbus on his second voyage, spoke out against the cruel treatment of the Taíno people.
It is not possible to recount the 100th part of what I have seen with my own eyes. A man had need to have a body of iron to undergo the labor they endure in getting gold out of the mines. They must delve and search 100 times over in the inner parts of the mountains till they dig them down from top to bottom. They must work the very rocks hollow. Bartolomé de las Casas.
Epidemics and famine swept the island. Yet the Spanish continued to demand that the beleaguered Taíno supply them with both food and labor. Garrisons were strung across the island to fortify the gold fields. When resistance sprang up, Columbus sent out military units to terrorize towns into submission.
They were so relentlessly persecuted and pursued with their wives and children up into the hills, so tired, hungry, and harassed. And there went with them disease, death, and misery, just as if they had been killed in the wars. They died of hunger and sickness that surrounded them, and the fatigue and oppression that followed. After 1496, no more than a third remained of the multitudes that had been on the island.
Taíno's suffering was so severe that thousands took their own lives rather than submit.
Wherefore many went to the woods and there hanged themselves, after having killed their children, saying it was far better to die than to live so miserably. Some threw themselves from the high cliffs down precipices, others jumped into the sea, and others starved themselves to death. Benzoni, soldier for Spain.
Some escaped into the mountains, including Guacanagari, the paramount chief who had befriended Columbus. He soon died, a homeless wanderer. By 1503, 11 years after Columbus's first voyage, only a few pockets of resistance remained. In the mountainous region of Charawa, Taíno people ruled by a woman named Anacaona successfully evaded Spanish demands for labor. Determined to break the resistance, the Spanish governor requested a diplomatic meeting. Anacaona agreed and summoned 80 regional sub-chiefs to her state house for the meeting. When the 80 leaders were gathered inside, the governor gave a signal and the thatched state house was set on fire. Soldiers lined up outside with swords. Taíno leaders who did not burn were killed as they fled the blaze. Anacaona was spared, only to be later executed by hanging. In the aftermath of the bloody carnage, a little boy stood among the ashes and smoke beside the charred remains of his father. A boy whose name the Spanish would come to remember well. Enrique.
I hope this video reinforces a little bit more of what I was looking for in this discussion question. As we go back over the history of the United States, it is important to note that early on in our history, there was a need for us to create heroes in our own story. And Christopher Columbus was one of those heroes that was actually created. If you go back to 1792, that'll be the first time that you will even see anybody trying to recognize Europe in their discovery, quote, discovery of the New World. The first Columbus Day celebration in the United States was in New York on October 12th of 1792. And it was to honor the Italian-American heritage, not necessarily Columbus. And then President Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1937 proclaimed October 12th to be Columbus Day, a national holiday. And then in 1971, the holiday date was changed to the second Monday in October. If you go back to 1828, you'll see that it will be by a man by the name of Washington Irving. He was a great fiction writer. He wrote a piece of work that probably all of you will recognize. It's the Legend of Sleepy Hollow with the Headless Horseman. But he will actually research Columbus, and he will create a mythical character out of his research. And that is a lot of where we get our modern day recognition of Columbus. We tend to sweep under the rug the fact that a whole civilization was wiped out, the Taíno, based on his second voyage to the New World. A couple of you in your discussion question said, yeah, but he didn't really have anything to do with it. I mean, he might have brought the people over, he might have brought the diseases, but you really can't attribute genocide to him. May I remind you, and as hard as this is to hear, Adolf Hitler didn't meet any of the Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. He was the perpetrator, and it was several other people who made it out his judgment or his ideals of creating a more perfect world in his eyes without that race of people in the world. I don't know how you separate that logic and that ideal of thinking from Columbus. I mean, if you read his journals, if you read what has gone on in history, he found them to be a very docile people with lots of gold, and he wanted to reap those resources for his mother country, Spain. And so he was able to take over, and because of his takeover and his greed and his need to take that money back to the crown, a whole civilization, the Tiano, were wiped out. And so when we go forth with these discussion questions, there are a couple things that you need to do. You need to make sure that you are reading that discussion question in its entirety and that you answer all aspects of the discussion question. Make sure that you have the minimum word post. 100 words is not a lot. Most people write a lot more than that. But whatever you decide to write in your discussion post, most of it will be judgment calls, and it will be you supporting your opinion based on fact. And so make sure you're doing the research. Don't try to just get through this discussion question in a hurry. Make sure you do the primary research to be able to answer that question with support and to be educated in how you answer the question. Please note that this is a major part of the online learning, and I am here to help you in any way that I can help you. But if you will follow those guidelines, read all the question, make sure you're answering all parts of the question, I think you'll see that your grade will increase as the weeks go by. For those that did a great job, I let you know you did a great job, and there were several in the class that did a great job. So please go forth, be strong, and make sure that any questions you have, you let me know and let me help you.